Hello everybody, we are continuing our section chapter that deals with the topic of devotion. Today is our second class. As we said, we will meet in this part of the article also more preliminary stages of devotion, more basic stages of devotion. And we said also because in the previous class we met the maybe what we can call the ultimate state of devotion, what Prabhuji will refer to in the words that we will meet today as the transcendental devotion. We called it, the part that we read, we called it a devotional testimony, where Prabhuji answers this question, what is devotion, what is bhakti, the topic of this article, the question of this article, and help us to really tap into this state, not just in him, but in us. This was our presentation of the previous class. And today, as we said, we are meeting also more basic stages of devotion, not only of the purest level of enlightened beings, but what is most likely the way our devotion will look when we embark on this journey. When we start this path, let's say we're attracted to it, or maybe we're already religious and practicing some kind of a religious path with this aspect of devotion. Probably we will not find ourselves always in this ultimate state of love and devotion, of purity that is transcendental to us egos, but we will find also more preliminary aspects. So let's see what Prabhuji tells about these stages, that he will reflect on them in the light of the topic of the gunas, that will also help us to meet and discuss a little bit the topic of the gunas in the eyes of the retroprogressive path, or in Prabhuji's message, Prabhuji's word. So let's read. Devotion develops gradually from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic, and finally to transcendental. So as we said, we are introduced with Prabhuji's words to the topic of the gunas. The gunas, as we know, are three modes, three categories of the material nature. I believe that we have mentioned this topic in one of our classes in one of the courses about the book Experimenting with the Truth. That again recognizes in the material nature three types, three categories, three modes. One mode is called tamas, the second is called rajas, the third is called sattva. These are the three gunas that is very familiar topic to the Eastern philosophy, particularly to Hinduism, and probably all the yogic practitioners in different levels are familiar with this word, but it can be a completely different, new concept for the Western mind that is not yet familiar with this concept. So we will try to address everyone, as we try oftentimes in our course, and give some basic explanation about what are these gunas. So according to this principle, everything in the material nature, again, is colored by three modes. We said the first one is tamas, or the tamaguna, and when we say tamas, we refer to everything that is dark, confused. Tamas is heaviness, tamas is stuckness, tamas is laziness, tamas is inertia, impurities, evil can be tamas. And we're giving a list of adjectives or phenomena to try and understand this concept. Again, if it's new to us, it will take us time to understand what do we mean when we say tamasic, but with time we will get to know it. The second guna is rajas, or the raja guna, that stands for everything that is loud, powerful, ambitious, hectic, fast, sharp. Action is rajas, movement is rajas, dynamism is rajas, arrogance is rajas, loudness, I don't know if I said already, restlessness, So this is the Raja Guna. And the third guna is Sattva. Sattva, we can say, is the favorable mode of the material nature, and this is a statement that we just say it now, and we will elaborate further as we proceed with the class. What does it mean favorable? What does it mean favorite? So, Sattva, we say that it's favorable because it's the less, it's the less material in the sense that you are less bound by the Sattva. Sattva is the guna that has less confusion, less bondage, less impulsiveness, less inhibition. Sattva stands for more purity, for gentle, for clarity, for kindness, for generosity. Again, all the beautiful qualifications that we aspire to as human beings are usually Sattva. And Sattva means more peace, more receptivity, more harmony. All this is Sattva. So as I said, I think as human beings, oftentimes we aspire to Sattva. In general, we also sometimes aspire for Rajas, and this is a different topic, when we want power and control and to succeed, and we want money and fame. This is Rajasic aspirations. But definitely in religions, we will find the obvious aspiration for the Sattvic state. In other words, in order to advance in the spiritual process, retroprogressive path included, according to as I see it, which means also the retroprogressive path, I think, favors Sattva. And again, we will talk more about it later as we proceed with this class, because it's a sophisticated statement to deal with what is the preference of the retroprogressive path. So I will try to explain as I understand the retroprogressive direction and aspiration in relation to the topic of the gunas. So Sattva, it's a favorable material state for the spiritual work, which means in order to transcend the material consciousness, and it's also favorable regardless of the spiritual work, because in Sattva we suffer less. There is less suffering. Again, there is less bondage. In Tamas, we are the most controlled and the least free. In Sattva, we are the most free. But all this we're speaking within the realm of the material consciousness, of the material world. As long as we are controlled by the gunas, this will be correct to say. When we speak about the gunas, we said that the gunas are three categories that are appearing in the material nature, or that characterize the material nature. We are not going to find pure rajas, or pure sattva, or pure tamas. But everything in the material nature is a combination of the three gunas in different proportions. In other words, different compositions of these gunas that are constantly acting together and constantly interacting with each other, which is what creates the material world, the interaction between the gunas. And we're constantly moving in the same way that we move from heat to cold when we get in touch with cold. Similarly, we constantly change our state of the gunas according to the interactions that we have in the material world. In other words, we influence others with the guna in which we are situated, and we are influenced by the world, by other people, by any item that we come in touch with. Anything rajasic will influence on us to be more rajasic. Everything sattvic will influence on us to be more sattvic, and everything tamasic will influence us in the same way. And again, as long as we are in material consciousness, which means not transcendental to the realm of the gunas, we are influenced and influencing. When we say spiritual, it's a word that we touched, of course, and we actually spoke about the spiritual as the realm that is transcendental to the time and space dimension. It's a topic that we delved in reflection to Prabhuji's words about the time, about the place. In spiritual, we refer to a place that is either including all the places or it's outside of this concept of place. And similarly with time, spiritual means outside of the time dimensions, or it means eternity, or it means now, but it does not, it's outside of the realm of the time. When we speak about time and space, we're in the material consciousness, in the material world. It's a different level, it's a different realm. When we say spiritual, it's what is outside time and space. We can also say spiritual, and we said it in different ways, again in the course, is what is not perceived by the mind. It's what is not perceivable. We said the spiritual cannot be spoken about. The spiritual cannot be touched. It's not concrete. We cannot describe it. We cannot attain it. Prabhuji tells us we can only be the spiritual. So another definition of spiritual can be outside of the mental perception and outside of the perception of the senses. And another definition that we can give to the word spiritual is outside of the gunas. Transcendental to the gunas means spiritual. Anything that is under the laws of the gunas, which means where it's influenced by the gunas, is in the what we will call material. So we just kind of go deep into the understanding of what the gunas stand for, then stand for the material apparent, the material world, the mundane means gunas. It's one way to look, to understand the material consciousness and the material world, the material level. Krishna says, Karmana sukrutasyahu sadvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu param dukam anyanam tamasapalam. By acting in the mode of goodness, sattva, one becomes purified. Works done in the mode of passion, rajas, result in distress. And actions done in the mode of ignorance, tamas, result in foolishness. Bhagavad Gita 14:16. Tamasic devotion is mere sentimentalism that creates confusion. Rajasic devotion is passionate and restless and leads to religious fanaticism. Sattvic devotion is peaceful, mature, and serene. Its meditative nature encourages introspection. So we got a little bit of understanding in relation to the gunas, and we are continuing with this topic and with our bigger context, which is devotion. And as I said, my attempt is to clarify, as I understand, the approach of the retroprogressive path in relation to this topic from the words that we find in Prabhuji in this particular article, and of course my general knowledge and familiarity with Prabhuji's message. And as always, I am clarifying that on one hand, what I'm conveying to express is what I learned from Prabhuji. These are not my ideas. At the same time, I may not do it perfectly, and these are not Prabhuji's work, it's my humble understanding. So, we mentioned earlier that the definition or the giving the gunas a category of being good or bad is a delicate point, and I would like to explain what I mean. When we and the reason I'm also so careful is because the retroprogressive path is very specific, is very delicate for us minds that are trying to understand it and explain it, and it's very coherent because it comes from an awareness. Prabhuji always keeps the same principles, the same directions, the same ideas. We might not understand at all times, and things can seem to us a little contradictory before we manage to really fully comprehend them. And this is why we want to be careful when we deal with Prabhuji's words in order to grasp their full potential. So denoting the gunas as being good or bad is problematic, in my humble understanding again, because I think that the retroprogressive path and life even, we can say, do not categorize things as being good or bad. Good and bad is in relation to us, to this ego. When I exist, certain things are nice to me, are appealing to me, are pleasant to me, and other things are rejected by me or threatening me or harming me, right? Then I need to divide. But if we look at in an objective view of life, everything just happens. Everything is objective. The definitions are coming from this entity. Okay, first point. The second point that is very connected to the topic of religions that we dealt with in the previous class and the dogmatic religiousness is the relation of the improvement of our personality, of us as a personality, to the ultimate spiritual work, which is the ultimate aspiration of the retroprogressive path as I understand it. Okay? The retroprogressive path speaks about consciousness, awareness, and of transcending the egoic view of life. The reason we are not fully aware, fully conscious, is because we have preferences and because we are identified with this persona, with this entity. Then our view is not objective, is not clean, it's not pure, because we prefer certain things. Once we are elevating the state of the gunas in us, we're becoming more and more sattvic, more generous, more considerate, more humble, more listening, more accepting. These are all important qualities for us spiritual seekers, and this is why we will find all religions advocate so much sattva in different words. We can find the term Brahminical qualifications, we can find maybe in Judaism purity of the midot, etc. But clearly religions direct us to be better people, kinder, nicer, more quiet, more harmonious, more tolerating, etc. However, our improvement as religious beings or as individuals, as long as we did not manage to transcend the egoic identification, which means we still identify with ourselves as a personality, can be a serious trap. And this is also something I observed from Prabhuji along the years. Prabhuji says in many places, if we have chains that do not allow us to act, it does not matter if our chains are made of gold or diamonds or iron or anything else. These are chains. And what we want as spiritual seekers or as devotees of the retroprogressive path or etc. is to be free, to look at life clean, not through this persona. As long as we have some persona to defend, we are inside this story. So we can have a sattvic, beautiful, gentle, harmonious, and kind story. And this story can keep us enslaved forever. Because sometimes it's harder to live a reality that is pleasant than to, or not a reality, an illusion that is pleasant, than to live an illusion that is miserable, that is difficult. Sometimes the misery can push us out. And if what we want is to get free of the bondage, what is important for us is anything that will help us to get out. We want air. We don't want to be okay. We don't want to make sense. We don't want to be accepted by everyone. This is not our aspiration. And we're going against these desires of the ego, right? To be accepted, to be, etc., not to be threatened, etc. So, and I think that this is a very important point to understand. Again, we're dealing with this topic of the gunas, because Prabhuji, as I see Prabhuji, from what I understand, not dealing a lot with the improvement of the personality. And this is also true based on spiritual association with Prabhuji along the years. Prabhuji always pushes us outside of the illusion, outside of the lies, outside of the misery, outside of the story, whatever story we have, into freedom, into liberation, into truth, to tap into the reality. And I think that Prabhuji also recognizes the big problem that the recommendations for improvement our personality on top of seeing truth cause to humanity. Right? People felt that they are better than others. We started to preach to each other inside the frames of their religions. And by the next step will be to control others. The next step will be to be violent to others. So it is very dangerous game when we are in the game of improving the personality and being better than others. Then we are harmful. Then we are not giving to the world. We are significant. And what the retroprogressive path directs us to is more and more consciousness, more and more awareness. And by awareness, we can examine the facts more easily, can bring more sanity, more intellectual clarity. Then we can also understand more. Then we can also be kinder. But the important direction is that our desire will not be to beautify this personality, but to see this personality. Our desire is to see ourselves with all the difficulty that may bring, and it is not easy. But this is what we want. We want to detach from ourselves, from this personality, from the gunas. We want a view that is clean, that is transcendental again. So this is why I wanted to stress this point in relation to the gunas. Now, and still, and for sure, Prabhuji definitely will recommend to us, as I understand and from what I've learned, to transcend the tamas, to transcend the rajas, to elevate our consciousness, to purify our consciousness, to internalize our consciousness, to advance. Because this will be more favorable, again, for seeing the reality. From tamas, it is very difficult to see the reality. From tamas, we are completely blind, confused, bound, stuck. It's difficult to speak with us about truth. So I think, from what I understand, and in the light of this topic of devotion, Prabhuji tells us in this word, if you are in a state of tamasic devotion, elevate it into rajasic. And if you are in rajasic devotion, elevate it into sattvic. And if you are in sattvic devotion, get out into transcendental, advance. Whatever state we recognize, the recommendation is to advance. Prabhuji does not recommend here, he just describes this process. The devotion can develop from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic and to transcendental. By this, I think that he shows to us that this can be a dynamic process. We can move. And what I take from it, and I would recommend from this, is that we should not stay stuck in whatever state we are, but as always, see ourselves, recognize, and awareness will always cause us to advance, because once we see, we want to improve. And Prabhuji gives us here tools to recognize what is tamasic devotion and what is rajasic devotion. Prabhuji tells us tamasic devotion will keep us in a level of sentimentalism. It's not real devotion. It's not this purity that we touched when we read the words of Prabhuji in the previous class, but it's very superficial. It's in the level of words, of feelings, of emotions, not deep devotion. And what it will cause in us is confusion. So it's not favorable. to stay stuck there. Rajasic devotion, Prabhuji tells us, is passionate, is restless. It can create in us fanaticism. Fanaticism can be very dangerous. We can cause a lot of harm to others if we are fanatic. So we want to, again, recognize if our devotion is Rajasic and then elevate, make it more sattvic. Again, I think that Prabhuji in these words does not tell us, okay, if this is not pure transcendental devotion like Lord Chaitanya, we can go to play basketball. No, but we can internalize it. Calm down, understand more, bring more logic, and the devotion can develop and be more and more refined. And again, the aspiration is the transcendental devotion, which is transcendental to the gunas. And when we say to elevate our consciousness, or we want a transcendental devotion, it does not mean that we are going to leave the physical world, but we refer to the level of consciousness. As we mentioned before, the gunas are what constitute the material nature. In other words, the material nature will not exist without the gunas. When we say the material nature, we mean all the world of names and forms. Our existence as a personality would not be without the gunas, and anything else that we see, touch, smell, etc. is here thanks to the gunas. When we want to elevate our consciousness, we don't want to leave the physical world, not yet, but in our consciousness not to be bound by the gunas. The gunas are an objective occurrence in a general sense. We said they are not good and not bad. We will need the gunas. Prabhuji many times says without tamas you cannot go to sleep. We need tamas. Without rajas we cannot wake up in the morning. We need rajas. When we speak about beings that transcend the level of the gunas, we mean that they are not acting from the material consciousness and can observe the material consciousness, that they are detached from the level of the gunas. But again, we will not leave the world of the gunas in a practical sense, in an objective sense. When we speak about the enlightened beings, that we mention them once in a while, it's our inspiration and aspiration, the enlightened beings. Entities that we recognize them as individuals who established their life in the transcendental consciousness. They are in the world, they are living in the world, but they are not acting from the mundane consciousness. And they are not acting from the egoic identification, which means identification with a personality, as all of us do. Enlightened beings are, as we said, transcendental to all the gunas, including sattva. And this is important to understand. Enlightened beings are outside the law of the gunas. And they are not going to act in ways that are going to agree with our mental perception of anything. They are free. They are transcendental to our mental perception and to our interpretation and to our ideas of good and bad. And this is why we can interpret mistakenly, wrongly, as if they are acting under the law of the gunas. And we will give examples. So for example, if we look at the great avadutas of India that were completely absorbed in divine consciousness, in realization of truth, and they did not take a shower for days and days. These beings were not tamasic. They transcended the mundane consciousness. Whereas if we will skip a shower for a day, most likely it's due to tamas. This is very different. Another example that we can give, if we see Jesus getting angry at the merchants in the temple, this is not an expression of rajas, of mundane anger, but clearly it's something that is coming out of divine vision, out of wisdom, out of love, out of wisdom that is way transcendental to sattva. But if we would get upset and turn the table upside down, most likely it is because of rajas. Somebody bothers us, something threatens us, and we're acting out of the gunas. Because something disturbs us as personalities. This is very different. And in the Bible, we can even see God getting angry, and of course, He's not under the law of the gunas, but transcendental. So, to summarize this section, we got a tour with Prabhuji into this topic of the gunas, into more basic levels of devotion. So Prabhuji recognizes that devotion is not only manifested in its highest purity, in the same way that love is not always manifested in its highest purity. And he recognizes the fact that we, human beings, can be in different stages of development and can have a lot of struggles and difficulties in our way to our fulfillment, to our full realization, full manifestation of our divine nature. And he, in my eyes, helped us to recognize that we can purify this devotion, again, elevate this devotion, and that it is recommended for us to do so, or else we can be trapped in a state that can blind us and that can cause sometimes more suffering than if we wouldn't embark on this journey at all. So if our goal is consciousness, liberation, realization, we need to constantly observe ourselves and recognize everything that stands on the way to seeing things as they are. For its part, devotion that transcends the gunas is a gift of existence that reflects the bliss and clarity of the self. In the same way, devotees can be tamasic, rajasic, sattvic, or transcendental. Transcendental devotees are not even interested in liberation. Having renounced enlightenment completely, they continually enjoy the nectar of devotion. Transcendental devotion cannot be reduced to a belief system. It is not born out of a theology, but from our innermost depths. It is expressed in different languages and traditions, yet does not belong to any institutionalized religion. So now we are going back to the highest state of devotion, to the transcendental state of devotion. And Prabhuji tells us about this level of devotees, that they are in such a high level of purity, that they do not need anything and do not want anything, including liberation, including enlightenment. I think that what we can understand, that Prabhuji talks about a state that is in a level, spiritual level, that is not less than a spiritual level of what we would call Brahman state, or someone that is in realization of the oneness, of the one nature. For its part, Prabhuji tells us, the devotion that transcends the gunas is a gift of existence that reflects the bliss and clarity of the self. So we see here first, obviously this is transcendental to the gunas. It's a gift of existence. We cannot do it. We cannot force this state in us. We can only prepare the conditions, which is creating more and more sattva in our devotion. This is the best that we can do. The transcendental devotion is a gift of existence. And what Prabhuji tells us here, it reflects the bliss and clarity of the self. What I understand from this is that it's the same level of consciousness of Brahman realization. It reflects the bliss and the clarity of the self. And we see here also, again, as we said, it's transcendental to the gunas. And therefore, my understanding of it is that it's not less than Brahman realization. The question, what is better, the path of devotion, of duality, or what is better, the path of meditation and realization of Brahman, is a big topic, a big question that we already delved a little bit. We will not delve too much in this context. But while Prabhuji definitely will describe the reality, according to my understanding again, as consciousness alone, only consciousness is. The ultimate realization is oneness, without names, without forms, without duality. I don't think that he sees the state of great devotees such as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we will meet in the next class as having an inferior experience or less realization than great individuals who experience the nothingness, the shunyata of Buddhism that we will meet in the next chapter. I do not think. I think that what we can understand from Prabhuji's message, is that this state of transcendence can manifest in different ways or in different languages, as we said earlier in the course. And this is why, of course, Prabhuji takes the time to expose to us his vision, his words, his contemplation, his experience through different languages. He appreciates all of them. He sees them as qualifying, as beautiful, as journeys that led individuals to realization. But again, I think the description of reality, if Prabhuji will be requested to describe it, I think that what he tells us is that only consciousness and that this is the ultimate truth, transcendental to the separation, to the entities. So the point that Prabhuji conveys here, I think it's a very principal understanding in the path of devotion that is very beneficial for all of us, regardless of our path. The path of devotion encourages us to love, teaches us not to be the center, and therefore also liberation, also realization is not our aspiration in the path of devotion. We are recommended to give less importance to this entity that we currently see as so important, so significant. It's the center of the world. Good is whatever is good for me. Bad is whatever is bad for me. This is our world as personalities. Every human being that is not enlightened, this is our view of reality. Not only this is our aspiration in everything, in any material pursuit, even if we are very philanthropic and have great ideals and want to help humanity and sacrifice, really, still we separate the world to good and bad. And we are in one side. Not only, even if we are embarking on the spiritual journey and we want to leave the world and go to the Himalayas and give up the any material possessions and ties and only try to meditate and transcend, we still want enlightenment. We still have goals that can, as we said in relation to the sattva guna, that we might want to be very sattvic, we also want to be very developed yogi practitioner, detached from the world, and feel that we are better than others. As long as the ego point of view to life is what leads us to act, we are not in the real spiritual work, and we are in a trap. So the desire for liberation can be a big problem. The enjoyment, because we had some spiritual mystical experiences, can be a big problem. Problem, we say, for whoever wants to sit and to detach from the identification. All this can keep us enslaved, trapped. The path of devotion has so much beauty that it helps us to give ourselves less important and to transform all the attention to God, to the Guru, to the deity, to the other. Devotees are less important. Our aspiration as devotees, at least this is what we hear, not so easy to find it expressed because it's not easy to get to this state. So we lower than a blade of a grass to be insignificant. This is the desire of the devotee. For sure, he does not want enlightenment. He is not important at all because what the devotee wants is just to love. And therefore, all the focus of the devotee, all of the focus of the passive devotion is in the object of love, which is God, the Lord, the deity. We worship, we love, we want to serve, right? Not to serve ourselves and our desires, but to serve our Lord. We're just aspiring to be devotees. We are not even devotees because to be a devotee is a very, very elevated level. But this is the beauty of this path. And we can also see this state manifested, not just as a path for us, but manifested in the level of individuals like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that experience the transcendental devotion that Prabhuji talks about. They did not want liberation because this level of devotion, of duality, of love is not less. Prabhuji used to tell us many times about Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, a very great realized master that for sure was established in a Brahman realization. But he used to experience, he had a devotional relationship with Mother Kali and used to experience with Mother Kali, and he did not want her to disappear. He didn't want to disappear into the light. He wanted to enjoy the relationship, the love. Also, Prabhuji a few times shared with us about Radha, the greatest devotee of Krishna, who loved Krishna so much. And she used to complain about the tears that came out of her ecstasy, ecstatic love to Krishna, because they disturbed her to see Krishna. She wanted the relationship. She cared about Krishna, not about herself and her mystical experiences. We egos, many times, we want to experience, we want to feel love, we want purity. No, in devotion we are not important so much. The beloved is the important. And I think this is the point that Prabhuji reveals to us here when he speaks about this transcendental devotion that reflects the bliss and the clarity of the self and even eliminates the desire for liberation. And now we will meet a few scriptural references from Prabhuji. We mentioned in the previous class that we find in this article different religions live together in harmony, in beauty, that when Prabhuji talks to us in this article about the state of devotion, he does two things. One is that he shows to us that this beautiful state of devotion exists in all religions, although they may seem to us very separate, very different. In fact, they are all sharing the same desire and aspiration of the state of love and unity with the transcendental. And also Prabhuji shows us in this article that actually this state of devotion is something that we all know as human beings, touched it, aspire for it. And in this, I think he, as we said in the previous class, connects between every individual, even the most secular, intellectual individual, to their religions, to the essence of their religions, to the meaning of their religions. Because ultimately they speak to us about something that we all know and that we all want. And in this beautiful article, it is expressed through this aspect of devotion. So now we are going to meet a few scriptural references from different religions that talk to us about this beautiful state of devotion. Devotion is mentioned in one of the most famous verses of the Bible. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. Which means, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. Deuteronomy 6:5. The Quran also tells us, if you should love Allah, then follow me. So Allah will love you and forgive you your sins. Quran, Surah Al-Imran 31. Through devotion, we gain access to God. In the Bhagavad Gita, we read, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyashchasmi tatvataha tato mam tatvato nyatva vishate tad anantaram. One can understand me as I am only by devotion. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Bhagavad Gita 18:55. And as we said, when we see all the scriptural reference that Prabhuji collects together, this is one example out of many, many examples in the context of the retroprogressive path, where many religions and philosophies live in so much harmony together, one next to the other, without any conflict, without any contradiction, without any hostility and separation and distinction that we can see, of course, evidently in the world of the surface, in the world of names and forms. In the surface, we find the gunas. In the gunas, there is hostility, there is separation, there is conflict. But in the transcendental that Prabhuji takes us into, the religion is one. We find in Prabhuji's words an example how all the religions live in so much harmony when we are aiming to their essence, and when we are dealing with the essence, reflecting on the essence, then we will not find so much contradictions. And this is, again, one example out of many examples in Prabhuji's content, when he takes us into a short tour in different religions and shows us how this devotion, this beautiful state, lives there in its beauty, in its glory, and it also sounds to us as if we are reading the same scripture almost. Love exposes us to the divine. Devotion shows us God. A devotee's heart knows the ultimate truth of life. It is important to understand the difference between knowing and knowing about. Knowing about refers to practice skills or memorize information, sports, mathematics, languages, and so on. On the other hand, knowing expresses a familiarity with someone or something. Knowing God is very different from knowing about anything else in life. For example, your dentist knows about your teeth, your mailman about your address, your mechanic about your car. They might recognize your face, but none of them really know you. Similarly, many religious people claim to know God because they know about His address, His language, His desires and inclinations. But you can only know someone you love. And the man knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I've gotten a man from the Lord. Genesis 4:1. The Bible uses the Hebrew term yada, or knew, to refer to a very intimate relationship. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew you, and before thou comest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee as a prophet unto the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. So in the words that we just read, Prabhuji reveals to us the important connection between knowledge and love, or love and devotion, and knowledge. We spoke a few times in the past in relation to the important distinction that Prabhuji makes in his message in different places between knowing something, true knowing, and knowing about. Or we can say between direct knowing, intimate knowing, to external knowing. And here we see the connection between love and devotion to the direct knowing, or to the intimate knowing. Prabhuji tells us when we love, we truly know. We can see in personal relationship, when we have a relationship with family, friends in a very intimate way, this intimacy, this connection of love opens us to so much more knowledge that we would be able to get if we just had to memorize a list of facts in a dry way, without love, without devotion, without connection. I remember that when I was a child, I used to have bronchitis. And I used to get attacks. And I don't even know how. Till this day, I do not know. But my mother used to just look at me. I was still playing with friends. I didn't feel anything problematic. I was perfectly healthy and okay. But she used to know before I had an attack that I'm going to have one. And it was always true. And I do not know how she knew it. But she saw something on me physical that allowed her to know it. Because she knew me so well. Of course, she cared about me as a mother. And this gave us access to information. So when we love someone, we know a lot about each other. When we love each other, we know so much more. We are listening, we are accepting, and this opens us to so much knowing, so much information that we don't even know that we know it. Because we get it in so much natural and effortless manner. And if we need to compare this type of knowledge, of knowing, to a situation in which we need to memorize a list of facts, dry facts, to the history test that we need to memorize very well so we can remember it tomorrow. Just for one day, we need to retain this information, not for a lifetime or many years. For one day, to retain all these facts, we all know that this can be very difficult and unpleasant mission. Because we have no connection with these facts. No love, no intimacy. We don't care so much about this fact. We only care about passing maybe the test the day after, and therefore there is no unity, and this is why we need to invest so much energy, so much effort in retaining all these facts. And Prabhuji tells us, when we love, we know. Not only Prabhuji tells us when we love, we can know our friend, our son or daughter or mother or husband and wife, etc. We can even know God. We as human beings, individually, imperfect, little personalities, we can love the divine and we can know the divine thanks to the intimate relationship that we develop with the divine. We will not know the divine from others, from religious scriptures, from words of individuals who tells us about the divine. But we can know the divine through an intimate connection with the divine, of love and of intimacy. We see in the quote that Prabhuji brought from the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says, only by intimacy and love with me, you will really know me. In other words, the only way, which is what Prabhuji tells us here, to truly know the divine is by love. We're trying to contemplate about the transcendental, understand the transcendental, analyze the transcendental, and we're having so many arguments and theologies and philosophies about these big questions. Prabhuji tells us if we love the divine, we know him directly. Not only through mental explanations, maybe also we will be able to explain and understand better intellectually. We will have more clarity in the level of the mind thanks to the devotion, but also we will know directly the divine because we love him. So we have this relationship with the divine when we really penetrate into the mysteries, into what is beyond logic, beyond understanding, beyond knowledge. We can penetrate there thanks to this vehicle, which is the love. Devotees do not know about God. Rather, they know God. Their love allows them to become familiar with Him. Similarly, feelings of respect and surrender help disciples develop an intimate relationship with their masters, but only devotion will lead them to a perfect communion. The devotee is the pinnacle of disciple. Just as those who love know their beloved, only a heart brimming with devotion truly knows God's presence. Their familiarity with the divine is about wisdom, not information. So here we are going back to our favorite topic, or at least mine, which is the master-disciple relationship. And Prabhuji connects here the topic of devotion to the master-disciple relationship and reveals the importance of the aspect of devotion in this relationship. He tells us when we respect the master, we will have a good relationship. When we love the master, we will have a better relationship, more intimacy, more transmission, more connection with the master. But only in devotion, which is the pinnacle of being a disciple, the highest level of disciple, when we love our guru, then there is a perfect communion. Then the disciple is one with the master. Then we really know what our guru would instruct us in every minute, in every question and decision that we need to make throughout the day, or maybe throughout our life, because our will is united with the will of the guru, because we love him. When we love, as we gave in the previous examples, in the more mundane examples, even if we love our husband or wife or daughter or mother, we know so much better the other. The same applies also to the relationship with our guru, that, as we said, in the context of the master-disciple relationship, ultimately the guru is a human being, the disciple is a human being. It's a relationship between two human beings. But the divine transmission, the divine connection, the communication in the level of the transcendence is enabled through this communion between human beings. When we love the guru, we truly know what he wants, what he thinks, how he would view things. Thanks to this love, much more than we would be able to know if we had to memorize everything that he said, or understand, which is much better than memorize everything that he said. But if we love him, then we will want what he wants. So we will know him in the most intimate manner. So as disciples, our aspiration is to unite with our guru. Originally, maybe because we want to be enlightened, because we wanted the level that he established in. This is why we approach the guru. But through the development of devotion that happens in this relationship, or thanks to the grace of devotion that we receive in this relationship, we no longer want to connect with the guru in order to get to a goal, in order to transcend our egoic tendency, but we love the guru so much that we want the will of the guru to be manifested, because he's so dear to us, he's so precious to us, because of this romance, this love that, of course, it's not different or separated than our love to the divine, than our love to the transcendence, than our love to enlightenment or to realization, because the guru is manifesting this state of realization. It's not different than God in this aspect, or then different than consciousness, or different than the transcendence. So in a way, we see how the love to the guru is our love to the realization, to truth, to our liberation. That it's not two different things, but it's one and the same. And we meet this unity in the devotional aspect and in the devotional relationship with the Guru that, in my humble opinion, can be enabled not only in a physical association with the Guru, in the same time and in the same place, but we can develop this love, this connection, also if we read a book of a realized being, also if we watch a lecture of a realized being. Our attitude, our openness, our love can allow us a deeper connection, a deeper intimate conversation, as we mentioned in previous classes, the intimate conversation that the Master always invites us into, and that he exposes to us the possibility to tap into it and to benefit of it. So the devotion that we will develop will allow us to have, again, a deeper, more intimate conversation, thanks to which we will be exposed to more of his level of consciousness, to connect more to his level of consciousness. This is my view and my understanding of Prabhuji's words, and of course based on my own relationship with Prabhuji and with the truth or the transcendence. And if you remember, when we dealt with the topic of the master-disciple, in the chapter that deals with the master-disciple, we saw how Prabhuji explains to us that ultimately this relationship is based on love. It's all about love. There is not much to understand about this relationship, to contemplate, to analyze, to question, to speculate, if we don't understand this one point that is so essential. These people are people in love. What happens here between them is a romance. It's not something that we will be able to understand on the level of the calculation. When we are calculative, when we try to understand what we get, what we give, what is going on here, who gets, who give, who uses the other, we won't understand. What happens here is a love story. And this is something we read in Prabhuji's words in his answer to the question about the master-disciple relationship, that when we look at the disciples of Buddha, the Shishyas of Shankara, the followers of Jesus, what we want to understand that what happened here is just a love story. Let's visit these beautiful words again from the article about the master-disciple relationship. Masters and their disciples do not establish a relationship. What happened between the Baal Shem Tov and his Hasidim, Buddha and his Sangha, and Shankara and his Shishyas was not a relationship but an encounter between darkness and light, between questions and the answer. The disciple is fertile soul, the master a rain-laden cloud. In this union, duality disappears in the absolute. The river merges into the sea. The drop vanishes in the ocean. Wisdom clears away ignorance. Light dissipates darkness. And the human becomes the divine. And we will conclude the class of today with more devotional words of Prabhuji that I think we can call yet again a devotional testimony. This is not our last class, but we are going to have another class in which we will meet the culmination of this article, which is another devotional testimony that Prabhuji brings not of himself, but of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this will be our next and last class. But now, today, we're going to conclude everything that we have spoken about devotion by now with more words from Prabhuji about the state that we can define, according to Prabhuji's definition, as the transcendental devotion. So let's listen carefully. Oftentimes in these classes we finish with very inspiring quotes that I think they are a very adequate culmination of the classes, and it's really recommended to take the time and really listen to Prabhuji's words. Maybe some of you will prefer to close their eyes and meditate and just let the words be absorbed. Other ones maybe prefer more listening in an intellectual manner, less comfortable with meditation, and that is okay as well. Everything is accepted and has a respected place in the retroprogressive path, in the retroprogressive eyes. But either way, my recommendation is to listen very carefully, attentively, and absorb each and every word that Prabhuji so kindly shared here with us about this beautiful topic of devotion. Thank you for joining. Jai Prabhuji. Devotion is one of those inexplicable mysteries that transcends logic. Therefore, the nectarious bliss of devotees does not come from what they know about the Lord, but from what they do not know about Him. They are like the gopis who do not know that Krishna is God, but see Him as the soul of their lives. Devotees are indifferent to both suffering and pleasure, to pain and happiness. They eliminate all their preferences, predications, inclinations, and conditioning, as well as any ideas, concepts, or conclusions that might threaten love. As their devotion increases, they diminish as someone and disappear like raindrops of water in the ocean. Devotion is dying to the apparent and awakening to the real. It is to perish to the ephemeral and be reborn in the true. It is the termination of the personal to make room for the universal. The evaporation of the temporal and transient to recognize the permanent and the immortal. Devotion is to forget the past and the future in order to observe the fresh dawn of the present. It is to leave behind what was and what should be in order to discover what is. Devotion is to die in time and space and be reborn in the eternal and infinite. Just as a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, if you love intensely, your love will unfold as devotion. Once your heart is flooded with devotion, you will be moved to worship the stars, the ocean, the trees, and the flowers. Every living being will inspire reverence in you. Your entire life will be transformed into a prayer, and each exhalation into only one hymn. Thank you. When this divine phenomenon occurs, you become a door to existence, a bridge to the whole. Jai Prabhuji.